I really do want to share with you why I called this the bad room.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. This will be my full Boys Season 4, Episode 4 video. There are so many WTF moments, so many Easter eggs, so we'll break it all down. If you're brand new to the channel, we're doing videos for all the episodes. The episode was titled Wisdom of the Ages, which is a reference to issue 5 of the Boys Highland Laddie miniseries, which is mostly just about the Huey character. It was published after the main Boys comic book story. This week was mostly a Homelander backstory episode revealing what really happened to him when he was created by Vought in the lab in the early 80s. Generally for all the characters though, the episode was about the sins of the past, their sins of the past coming back to haunt them. So in the context of the Homelander storyline, it was more about Vaught's past sins coming back to haunt them, or the scientists here working in the lab who created Homelander. The episode starts inside the secret Vought lab that Homelander calls the Bad Room, or where the Bad Room is the place where they created him and tested him like a lab rat until he matured enough physically, like got old enough to come fully into his powers. There's a bunch of Easter eggs all across the room here, but the team is still working on projects in present day. It seems like they're working on the temporary Compound V, like the green Compound V right now. So they're meant to be like the skunk works of Vought that Stan Edgar had working on their most advanced projects. We see the concept art of Homelander they had done up in 1987, which is the year Homelander would have been about 6 years old. This is when they were developing the Homelander persona. In-universe, he's meant to have been created, like his actual birth happened in 1981. They later revealed that he actually started using the Homelander name, like he transitioned to the Homelander persona when he was about 16 years old. So this is just meant to be early workshopping when they were kind of working out the Homelander persona. There's a picture of the scientist back in the day, newspaper clippings from that time. There's a report written with really weird sentences that seemingly don't make any sense. It's not clear if it's something that young Homelander wrote or if it's something else that was going on that one of the scientists wrote. If you try to actually read the sentences, like it doesn't actually make sense. All these different test tubes, obviously his blood samples. We find out his creation was called Project Odessa. It's a Greek name meaning long journey. It also comes from the word Odyssey. So it's all about Stan Edgar's long-term plan to create the perfect being. Young Stan Edgar actually referenced that during the events of Season 3, like he was quote-unquote working on something that was going to be much, much bigger than what was going on with Soldier Boy here.
Think of it as a trial run.
A trial run for what?
There's a newspaper clipping about the discoveries in human nervous systems, probably what Vought learned about the human nervous system by testing Homelander so thoroughly. Homelander destroys all the cameras and the phone lines before coming down. Love the way they treat this too, like they're treating it like a grand invasion, but then he shows up and they sort of stop short. They have a bit of a funny, awkward moment where he comes in with the ice cream cake. You can kind of tell though that they think that this is worse, like, oh, maybe it'd been better if a team had been trying to invade us. They would have had a better chance of surviving then. And even though we talk about how good Antony Starr is as Homelander, like an amazing character, amazing performance as the character, this episode in particular could win him an Emmy. Like that's how good he is in this episode. Antony Starr cooked in this episode. Also literally because Homelander cooks that dude in the oven. Notice they call him John. That's because that's the name they gave him when he was born. They never gave him a last name. Nobody but this team and Stan Edgar would actually know that name. He recognizes some of the older scientists who were around when he was being tested here. We see his picture on the wall with them when he was younger. He has them bring Barbara back, who's the woman in the photo. She was the manager of the team and the closest thing that Homelander had to an actual mother, which explains a lot of his mommy issues on the show and why he's so obsessed with the milk. And even though Homelander is a total psychopath, like he's absolutely crazy, they do want you to sympathize with him, and you kind of do a little bit, like you see how terrible it was for him growing up. So you at least understand why he is the way he is in present day. The other funny callback you might have noticed here is that the ice cream cake is in the shape of a whale, which is a callback to the dead whale from Season 2, R.I.P. Then we get a lot more answers about what's actually going on with Butcher. A lot of people were asking about this after the first 3 episodes. He's got like a mystery parasite underneath his skin worming its way around. It was in his brain earlier. We see it go around different parts of his body in the shower here. And it really takes to like the end of the episode to find out what's actually going on. And we actually learned, big surprise, big WTF moment, is that he already took permanent Compound V, answering a lot of people's questions because people are like, well, couldn't he just heal himself if he took permanent Compound V? Butcher claims that he thought that it didn't heal him, like he's still getting sicker, or so he thinks. But what's actually going on is that he did develop new Compound V powers, and the parasite is just part of what those powers are. He just hasn't realized what's going on yet. And it's actually that parasite inside him, whatever his compound V powers are that created that winds up acting to kill Ezekiel, saving him because it was dying of oxygen deprivation. There's still a lot of questions about what's actually going on there, but now I kind of think early theory is that when he's hallucinating Becca, when Becca's talking to him, it's actually the parasite inside him. It's just making itself look like Becca when it's talking to him. Like in the shower when she's giving him that big call to action, pick yourself up, Butcher, you can't quit now. It's actually the parasite inside him that's telling him to continue. Like, pick yourself up, go on. A lot of people getting Compound V in this episode. Don't worry, I will talk about Huey's dad when we get to that part of the episode too, because it's also a big callback to the original Boys comic book. We find out, though, that he's actually brain dead at this point, and they're arguing about whether or not to pull the plug. His mother seems like she's made her peace with it. Huey doesn't want to let him go, and develops this plan to use permanent Compound V to keep him from dying. There's a real big Disney joke. It was pretty obvious this time. Like, sometimes they're more subtle about their references to real-world stuff. Sometimes they're incredibly obvious, like this time. The Vought V52 Expo is a convention for Vought, basically their in-universe parody of Disney's D23 Expo, but just for stuff that Vought produces, featuring the Seven, Adam Bork, PJ Burns' director character that we just saw, and another big crossover with the Gen V characters. We've been wondering, because we saw them in the trailer, like when are they going to actually show up? They're calling Caitlin and Sam the Guardians of Godolkin because at the end of the Gen V show, they basically blamed everything bad that happened on all the other kids that they're now keeping in lockdown in that underground medical facility, who they also mentioned during the episode. So it sounds like Caitlin and Sam will show up in next week's episode if they're teasing them here. Their team that they're calling the Guardians of Godolkin is meant to be a reference to the Guardians of the Galaxy. They also reveal that they're showing a cut of that A-Train movie, Training A-Train, with Will Ferrell, so we might actually see like a funny in-universe clip of that, like we saw the movie premiere for the Dawn of the Seven during the previous season. Prepare for even more Homelander memes. There's a commercial for Tech Knight's TV show The Whole Truth, which is a parody of true crime detective shows, which was featured heavily during the Gen V show. If you didn't watch those episodes, Tech Knight, within the universe of The Boys, is a combination parody of Iron Man and Batman, but the way the TV show has changed his character is they gave him this TV show and made him more of a Batman parody just because it's so expensive for them to do that Iron Man armor with special effects. But his whole damage, like all the superheroes on the Boys TV series, are degenerates and have some kind of weird condition or some mental problems. Tech Knight's whole thing is that he has a brain tumor that actually causes him to want to hump every single hole that he comes across. So not only do they have a bunch of funny moments with that during Gen V, with him just getting caught on tape, humping everything in sight, like every hole in sight, the title of his TV show, The Whole Truth, is also a joke on that too. But remember, Vought controls all the TV shows here. Like, these are airing on Vought-controlled TV networks. So the Tech Knight episode here is all about placing the blame on the other Gen V characters that Vought has on lockdown right now. The other big reminder, in real life, if you didn't realize it too, Chance Perdomo, who plays Andre on the show, died in real life recently. It was very sad. May he rest in peace. They were actually getting ready to film Gen V Season 2 when it happened, and they said that they since paused production, they rewrote the season a little bit. They're not going to recast the Andre character, so what they'll probably do is just explain that Vought killed him, or he died fighting Vought before the events of Season 2 pick up. There's a clip of Cameron Cole on his talk show talking about Bob Singer's new anti-superhero legislation. We find out that he's the one flipping channels, and because Cameron Cole, like I said, is also on Vaught's payroll, they have him trashing Bob Singer. Starlight then tries to make an alliance with him, separately from the boys who are really just working for him because they work for the CIA. She's going to try and use her popularity, her Starlight movement, to get more support for his anti-superhero bill in Congress, because otherwise, Vought controls most of Congress and there's no chance for the bill passing. She makes a CSI Las Vegas burn, saying that only zombies and old people watch the show. Like, nobody actually watches it because they like it, like they just accidentally leave it on in the background. We get more of the Frenchie storyline with Colin listening to Ray Charles records, and they kind of explain more of the backstory there and what happened with his dead parents. Frenchie worked for the mob, and his mother was a federal judge prosecuting the mob, so the mob just had her killed, and Frenchie was the one to do the deed. But when he went to kill her, her family was with her, so he wound up killing Colin's younger sister as well too, and his father, and Colin just happened to be there when it was happening. The only weird moment during this is that he says that when he was younger and he witnessed this all going down, he saw the scars on Frenchie's ankle, but because apparently he's had a relationship with Frenchie, they've been getting it on for a while now. You'd think that Frenchie, being so naked all the time with him, he would have spotted his scar long before now. He eventually winds up telling Colin the truth, who then tries to kill him. Frenchie does not stop him because he kind of wants to die, like he wants his penance to be Colin killing him. Like I said, this episode is about everybody sort of confronting the sins of the past. The only difference with that is that during the Homelander story, it's Vought's previous sins coming back to haunt them, like this team of scientists' past sins coming back to haunt them. We find out Firecracker is holding a rally in front of Starlight's headquarters, and what Sage has done is part of her grand plan to sort of weaponize everyone against each other and get the country to burn itself to the ground, is that she's turned Firecracker's crazy podcast, Truth Bomb, into a big TV show, and she's trying to goad Starlight into actually fighting her on camera so that everybody will see it and just get pissed off even more, basically escalating the conflict in the United States. Like, it seems like things play out exactly the way Sage wants them to play out during the episode. She also details a little bit of her plan to the Vought workers here about how they're using this web of misinformation to sort of drive everyone's actions. Her whole thing about weaponizing misinformation on the internet, using it against people, is exactly what Stormfront did during Season 2 with her quote-unquote storm chasers. Absolutely loved all the Deeps scenes with her during this episode. Like, when he shows up here, he seems low-key obsessed with her now, and she wants nothing to do with him because her brain has regenerated. And they do confirm a lot of my theories after last week's episode about what was going on with that metal spike. Basically, she uses the metal spike to lobotomize herself because her brain becomes so overactive that she can't chill out, and this is the only way to actually do it. So when she does it, she becomes more like an actual person who can just enjoy herself in the moment. But I love the way they sort of tease this storyline out, because at first here, the Deep is kind of obsessed with her because they just got it on, but because her brain has grown back now, she's repulsed by him again, and he's totally confused, like he has no idea what's going on. We find out that the super dirt that she gives Firecracker on Starlight is that Starlight 6 months ago, so we're talking like the events of Season 3, got an abortion, and it would have been Huey's baby, which he talks about later in the episode too. So Huey knew that it happened, but they didn't tell the rest of the team. For those of you also asking, like, this raises a lot more questions, like, wait a minute, does this mean that she would have had a superhero baby with powers just like Ryan? I don't think that that's the case. Keep in mind that there are superheroes in the world of The Boys that have children. We saw a lot of them during the Gen V TV show, like Translucent's son also has powers like Translucent. But here's the thing, Ryan is meant to be the only naturally born superhero who had powers at birth. In the comics, it's a little more spelled out. Superheroes are supposed to be sterile after they take Compound V, like Compound V makes them sterile. But for instance, in the comics, Queen Maeve winds up having children, they just don't have powers, they're just like normal children. So it's kind of the same deal on The Boys TV show. Translucent, for instance, got Compound V, became part of the Seven, did all kinds of degenerate stuff. He and his wife conceive a child, she gives birth, the child is born normally like all the other children who are not Ryan, but then they give the babies Compound V, and that's how Translucent's son got powers like Translucent. So all the other superhero children that you see out there were not born with superpowers, they were just given Compound V as babies. They make a bunch of jokes about Firecracker's celebrity friends who are based on real-life celebrities like Jon Voight and Kanye. That's because Vought is positioning themselves as very right-wing within the context of the universe, and in real life, those celebrities like Jon Voight and Kanye have expressed a lot of right-wing beliefs. Like all the Kanye posts supporting Trump, for instance. One of the weird things, though, during this Starlight storyline is her actually lying to Butcher and the boys about her real backstory with Firecracker. Like, he asks her, why does she want you so badly? Like, why does she hate you? And she doesn't tell them. Firecracker mentions Ezekiel, the pastor, who's basically a parody of Reed Richards from the Fantastic Four with the stretchy powers, who comes later in the episode. Homelander then makes Frank in the lab play the game of waste paper ball, sort of revealing some of his past trauma. They would put him in the blast furnace to see how much heat he could withstand while they were just playing games outside watching what was going on. He explains that even though it didn't char his skin, it did burn him a little bit, and it really, really hurt. Like, he's not meant to be totally invulnerable, like you can hurt him, but he is really, really hard to kill. More powerful than any other superhero on the planet. Except for maybe Ryan. They just want to hammer home, though, that all these scientists treated him like a true lab rat, like completely dehumanizing. He winds up burning him in the oven for revenge and then does similar things to the other scientists in the room. Then we find out Huey asks A-Train to get the vial of permanent Compound V to save his father. There's a bit of a twist with this too, like the way the episode goes down when his father gets the Compound V. I'll explain that when we get to that part of the episode though. They wind up running afoul of Kimiko's old friends who were captured by those same people in Shining Light. In universe, they're meant to be like a terrorist far-left organization, and I think they're meant to be inspired by the real-life Communist Party of Peru Shining Path or the New People's Army. They're after Kimiko because she killed a bunch of their people in previous episode. This woman is named Tala, who we find out that Kimiko, when she was working for Shining Light, like she was still working on their team, captured her and drummed her into their fighting pits. So this is meant to be the sins of Kimiko's past coming back to haunt her. It's a parallel for Frenchie's story, the sins of his past coming back to haunt him. Like I said, the same thing with Homelander's storyline too. There's a funny scene of the Deep singing with Firecracker here. He looks super horny for her, but he's super horny for literally anybody, like anything that breathes. There's a real big Spider-Man Easter egg that some of you might have spotted, even if you haven't read the comic book. Mother's Milk mentions they just used 50 grand of Mallory's money, burning it on some information they were trying to get from Webweaver in-universe, who's meant to be the boys' parody of the Spider-Man character. He's featured during a sequel comic book story to like the main story. I think it's set like 10 years later after the events of the original Boys ending. So basically Butcher is saying he'll keep the secret straight up Spider-Man's butthole because they just witnessed Webweaver, this Spider-Man character, giving himself a drug-laced enema. You have to remember all Vought superheroes are complete degenerates. They basically interrogated him looking for dirt on Firecracker and found out that she got it on with a 15-year-old when she was younger, making it a crime, like making it a sex crime. And because Webweaver is a parody of Spider-Man, he's also a parody of Peter Parker, who also captures really spicy photos for Vought, like Peter Parker captures pictures of Spider-Man for the Daily Bugle. So they got the pictures of her doing the deed from Webweaver, who had taken them back in the day. Butcher then makes Mother's Milk promise to save Ryan if he dies before he's able to save him, and to eventually raise him right because he assumes he's going to be dead either way and won't be around to actually raise Ryan himself. Still kind of wondering how his new Compound V power is going to work with that weird parasite. Like, is it still killing him somehow? Like, is he still gonna die no matter what? Firecracker makes a joke about his British slang, not understanding a word that he says, and they threaten to reveal the information that she's secretly a pedo, which would destroy her fanbase theoretically and Sage's plan, but she winds up calling an audible and releases the photo herself before they can do it, showing how quick she is on her feet, quick to think, and is able to spin it to her benefit. Sage's plan, essentially, getting Starlight so pissed off that she attacks her on camera so that the entire nation sees it. It is basically exactly what Sage wanted to happen, like a version of this. And she does seem kind of impressed by Firecracker, like, oh wow, you're actually revealing this. Okay, pretty good. Good for you. Like Sage wasn't expecting the whole twist with that picture. We get a longer scene with Ezekiel. We also find out that Starlight, when she was 13, wound up injuring a civilian during her first superhero save. Then we jump to A-Train, who's infiltrated Homelander's apartment looking for the Compound V. The history book for Patriots is Vought's fake version of history. They actually did a funny in-universe promo for it, starring Ryan, who was selling it for Vought on their TV shows.
It's the most important events in our nation's history. Learn how a kind doctor founded Vought American to make the world a safer and healthier place. Read about how Soldier Boy single-handedly beat the Nazis. Back when he was still a good guy.
A-Train finds Homelander's stash of keepsakes, all the weird stuff that he keeps around, the picture of Stormfront from World War II with the original Vought who created the company and the original Compound V formula, Stillwell's milk bottle from Season 2, Black Noir's sword after he killed Tim, the original Black Noir, and his gray pubes that he's been pulling out. There are a couple funny moments too when he's sneaking around, like looking at all the secret compartments, like he finds a stash of breast milk. The reason why it's kept hidden here is because it's actual breast milk, not regular milk, so that's why he's not keeping it in like a regular fridge. Finds the permanent Compound V that he's keeping there, and also finds out that Ashley is there trying to get back at Homelander, and they form their own alliance. The funny thing about the Ashley reveal too is that she left a dumper in his toilet, which is what the Deep told her to do in a previous episode. Like, you know what would make you feel better? Leaving a dumper in their toilet. We'll see what winds up happening with Ashley, because usually they give her some kind of small win, like, oh, things are looking up for her, like things might actually end well for her, but usually something really terrible winds up happening as a result. So do not be surprised if something terrible winds up happening to Ashley. She's meant to be kind of like the Meg of the series, to make the Family Guy reference, like just everybody clowns on her all the time. She's sort of like the comedic punching bag of the series. Back in the Bad Room, they show Homelander's growth over the years. Notice when they stopped calling him John and just started calling him Homelander when he was about 16 years old. I think the idea is that's when he fully came into his powers and started wearing the actual Homelander suit. We find out one of his other past traumas is that the Marty scientists here started calling him Squirt when he caught him jerking off, and explaining how that all worked with him in the Bad Room, being locked in there for days on end, and then just watching him on cameras 24/7. It sounds like the most messed up thing ever. Like, you clearly understand, oh, this is exactly why Homelander is so messed up now. He makes him jerk off in front of the rest of them, then lasers his junk off. R.I.P. to Marty. because then Barbara comes back, who was sort of like his surrogate mother. Terrible mother, by the way, but the closest thing he knew to a mother, and orders him to put Marty out of his misery. She was a piece of work. Like, she really works him over too and kind of reveals the truth of everything. Like, no, you don't understand. This is how we mess with your head. When they go inside the bedroom and they start talking, she explains how he was born, the homeless woman they paid to carry his embryo to term, lasering her guts out, and all the doctors in the room when he was being born. That's actually an Easter egg for the original Boys comic book. That's how Homelander in the comics was born. He basically tore his way out of the womb, killing everybody in the room, making him the original laser baby. The real truth bomb she winds up dropping on him is that Homelander could have broken out of the bedroom at any point, but he let himself be subjected to all these things by these people because of the way they conditioned him psychologically, the way they messed with his head. As a way for them to control him, because they knew there'd be no physical way for them to actually control him, they actually used psychological means, bringing in the world's best psychologists to condition in this obedience to him and this need for approval from them so that he wouldn't leave, like he would let himself be subjected to all these things. He claims that he's overcome that in present day. We'll see if that's true, because I still think that Ryan is going to be his ultimate weakness. Loved all the Huey and Kimiko scenes. We don't get a lot of scenes with just the two of them together. He winds up taking out one of the attackers himself, pretty brutally, mind you. Kimiko winds up learning the truth about how she's responsible for all the terrible things that happened to this other woman, and it's her past sins coming back to haunt her. They jump back to the firecracker storyline. For those of you asking what's going on with this medicine inside the gun purse that Frenchie finds, this is actually medication for acid reflux disease. Not sure why she has acid reflux, but Frenchie puts it back in the purse, like he doesn't take the medicine. We get that crazy scene of Butcher versus Ezekiel. We do get to see some Reed Richards stretchy powers, but I already explained, like I said, how the parasite in Butcher essentially acts on its own to save Butcher because it's dying as well from oxygen deprivation. He winds up passing out though when it happens, so when he wakes up, he has absolutely no idea how Ezekiel died. So it sounds like they're not going to reveal what's really going on with his powers until later this season. Early theory is that organism will grow more powerful the longer time gets on. Then we get that funny scene of Sage and the Deep getting it on together again. She gets him the fried pickles that he talked about earlier and explains the truth about the metal spike and lobotomizing herself, confirming my theory after last week's episode. There were a lot of confusion about that, like, what did she use the metal spike for? The whole thing with her brain regenerating itself isn't something that happens to all Compound V superheroes. That's just part of her own unique powers. Love that it's the butt stuff that actually got him on board with lobotomizing her. Like, he wants nothing to do with it until she mentions that, like, oh, if that's what we're going to do, then let's do it. They go out on the 2 Live Crew song about doing it in the butt. Great song choice. Then we find out that Victoria Newman goes on TV now connecting Robert Singer to Starlight and starts to throw him under the bus, sort of seeding the idea that they're trying to get the public to turn against Robert Singer so that they'll actually support Victoria Newman becoming president over him, either through an impeachment or he'll suffer some quote-unquote accident that Vought engineers. And everybody will love it because they'll hate Robert Singer, like, oh, the bad guy's gone, we now get the good person in office, the person who's on Vought's payroll. Then he calls Starlight and says that her attack on live camera basically destroyed the superhero bill, ending their alliance. And I already explained this scene with Butcher and Huey. Like, Butcher catches Huey with the permanent Compound V and reveals that he already took the Compound V himself. Like I said, I think that it gave him powers without him realizing it. Like, he thinks that it doesn't work, but it actually did work, and that's probably why he's hallucinating Becca, because Becca is probably that organism just talking to him inside his head. We'll see if they give the organism an actual name, like it has its own consciousness separate from Butcher's. But I do love the way they use this as an opportunity to bring back Chantel Van Santen as the Becca character, even though it's not really him hallucinating Becca, like I said. For those of you that were confused about this last scene with Huey's father getting the Compound V superpowers and waking up, what winds up happening is that he goes to see his father, his mother's also there. When he comes back in, notice that he has not given his father his Compound V that he has in his pocket, like he chose not to give it to him, he's going to let him die. But all of a sudden when you see the blue flowing through the tubes, notice the look on his mother's face. So I think what happened here is that his mother is the one that gave him her own permanent Compound V, like somehow she got a hold of it and gave it to him. We'll find out what his powers are going to be in next week's episode probably. Like, I don't expect them to wait that long before revealing what happens next after this moment. The reason why this is a super deep cut Easter egg for the original Boys comic book is because the comic book version of Huey is based on Simon Pegg. So like if the Boys TV show was made 20 years ago, Simon Pegg would have been playing the Huey character. They actually did a version of this during the Boys Diabolical animated series where one of the episodes was based more on the comic book versions of Butcher and Huey. In the original comic, Huey winds up taking permanent Compound V. Most of the boys wind up getting Compound V superpowers. So giving him Compound V powers on the show is sort of a reference back to that. Then they reveal what Homelander did. Like, do you want to know why I called this the bad place? And then they obviously cut away, but then they cut back to her inside the room. And they reveal that Homelander basically pulled all the other scientists apart and trapped her in that room with their bodies, locking her in there. So she's going to stay in there until she either starves to death, she dies of dehydration, or someone from Vought winds up finding her and releasing her. But it seems like she's going to go crazy before any of those other things happen. There are so many WTF moments, so many Easter eggs, so if there's anything you spotted in the episode, any references that I didn't talk about during the video, just write them below in the comments. Overall, it was a banger episode, probably one of the best ones so far, and probably one of the best Homelander-specific episodes just in general. My full episode 5 video will post next week after they release it, so be sure to enable alerts for my channel so you don't miss that. Big reminder to House of the Dragon Season 2 Episode 2 coming on Sunday. There's a bunch of other videos that I'm working on. Everybody click here for my full House of the Dragon Season 2 Episode 1 video, and click here for my Boys Season 4 Episodes 1 to Episode 3 video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.